Hey guys, welcome to Super Geeks, Episode 7, Season 2, Episode 7. My name is George, I'm your host. With me today, as usual, is my friend Carlos Pedraza. How you doing, Carlos?
Always glad to be back. I'm good, thanks.
Awesome. And Carlos, as usual, just because sometimes one or two people come back and they want to know what's going on, where can people find you, and what have you been doing out in the geekdom world?
Well, I am a independent screenwriter and producer and former fan filmmaker, having worked on Star Trek Hidden Frontier and Star Trek New Voyages. I currently run the Aximonitor website, which has been tracking the lawsuit and aftermath of the lawsuit of Axinar and copyright infringements.
And we have a new on-the-road reporter named Shawn. How are you doing today, Shawn?
Yes, I'm on the road today. Oh, how you doing, George? What's going on?
He's not on the road. He is covering the hurricane in the Carolinas.
That's right. I'm covering the hurricane in the Carolinas.
That's what all that sound is in the background. It's the wind, and the rain, and the storm.
We're gonna call him the warp speed reporter. I don't know, something hyperspace reporter. We'll figure it out.
That'll work, sure. What's going on, George? How are you?
I'm good, my friend. I thought it was funny because Sean's on the road. He's so hardcore. He's part of the show while he's on the field, and he's with his starship flying around, dropping off dishwashers, and that's awesome.
Well, if we're super geeks and he's our on-site reporter from wherever, wouldn't it make sense to give him a superhero name like Flash Drive or something?
You know how Cisco was the guy that did the names on Flash? Well, I think Carlos should name his superhero name. Not because
I'll have to give that some thought.
Hold on, not because of the reason someone might throw at me. It was man. You know what I'm saying? It's not about that. Anyways, I was just saying.
You're too late, George. I've already given him his superhero name.
The superhero name is Super Dishwasher? I don't know.
No, it's Flash Drive.
Actually, that works pretty good.
I like Flash Drive.
For those
that is actually pretty good.
At home.
I challenge anyone to Google this and see if Flash Drive is the name of a hero that's been in the comics. It doesn't matter if it's Marvel because they don't count. If it's DC, that's cool.
Wow.
Oh, that was harsh.
I like Marvel in the movies, but the comics, DC rules. Anyways, so
I don't think there is any superhero named Flash Drive.
I will take your word for that. So, Shawn, guess what? Let's copyright this.
Cool.
We're putting a timestamp on it right now. If Heyman was here, he would say, that doesn't matter because they can still see you. But whatever. All right, so you need his flash drive, and it's good to have you on the show. So, Shawn,
wait a minute, hold up! No, what? George, no, you've just ruined it. You've told everyone his secret identity.
No, I said Shawn, not his last name.
Oh well, that'll make it really hard to narrow.
Yeah,
it
nobody's
down.
Gonna figure that out.
Yeah, well, everybody knows Arrow and Flash's secret identities, so screw it. You know what I'm saying?
Everybody except the people in those universes.
Oh, you wait, son. You're only on the end of season. You're in the middle of season 2 of The Flash. You wait. By the way, Shawn, what kind of a shuttle are you in right now?
I'm in a 2010 white Honda Odyssey that actually looks exactly like a shuttlecraft. So yeah, it's all good.
That's okay. All right.
And see if it's got the little red stripe going down the side.
I haven't gotten it yet because I'm worried that the locks would change in the house if I do that. So it's not. But I do have a Starfleet Delta in the back window, along with a Mandalorian symbol and a Rebel Force symbol in the back window.
It's funny because I just started playing The Sims 4 on Origins Access, and after gathering all these mods, plus what they include in the newest thing, I have a house full of Sith, Jedi, Starfleet officers using the Star Trek Beyond uniform, and more. And Mandalorians using Boba Fett armor. So, yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
They just get my 2015 New York Mets National League champion sticker on the back, and you'll be all set. That's all.
All right. And Sunsail, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. I mean, I would have taken the fall for Flash Drive and said that there was drag racing going on outside my house if you came to me first. But whatever.
Real quick.
Besides, I'm one of those people who really loves Biff's cane, old Biff's cane, the one with the fist on it, because you know what I'm going to do with that cane.
Damn.
User in your channel timed out.
So, son, I know that you have been, and Carlos and I, we talked about this last week. You have just started binging The Flash. We're going to get into the CW as one of our topics.
Oh, I definitely slowed down with season 2 for sure.
Yeah, well, it's funny you said slow down, isn't it? Ironic. But,
I see what you did there.
It wasn't too obvious, right? So, son, what did you think, so far, where you're at? What do you think of Zoom, first of all, and the whole multi-Earth explanation?
Okay, so the biggest question I still have from season 1 is, because of other things that have been set in motion, there's still an even bigger question. They killed Eobard Thawne at the end of season 1.
Did they?
Yeah, because Eddie shoots and kills himself.
User entered your channel.
Oh, no, he did. You have to remember, I want to say this, what Carlos just said, but here's my way of looking at it. They killed, they didn't kill Eobard Thawne, they wrote him out of existence through a time paradox. Now think about that. And
wait, let me finish. All
right, go ahead.
Eddie kills himself to erase Eobard Thawne a la Back to the Future style. If this person doesn't exist, that future doesn't exist. Okay. So that death instantly disappears Eobard Thawne as he currently is, and then that huge singularity shows up. Why wasn't that entire reality also done that way? Because Eobard Thawne not existing means that all of the shit that went down since he came back also shouldn't have existed.
It actually gets explained, and I know you don't mind spoilers. It's not really a spoiler. I'm just going to tell you this. There is an episode coming up based on what you told me, the episode you're on, that explains everything you just asked me. And that's what I love about the CW. There is an episode coming up called The Reverse Flash Returns, and I'm going to drop it right there.
I've seen it.
Okay, well, you should realize that they explain why he can still exist.
I understand that he can still exist, but that makes the previous explanation of him not existing kind of bullshit.
Just wait, because it gets even worse on Legends. Once you get to Legends
It
tomorrow.
really does. I mean, I learned everything I learned about to learn from Back to the Future and every bad Star Trek time travel episode, which they needed to do something that people like, because everybody loves time travel episodes, and we need to boost the ratings. But the thing about time travel in Trek is that it is never consistent. Janeway makes a joke out of it.
Sean, I wish you had been there a few episodes ago, because we did talk about that. Babylon 5 was consistent, and it wasn't on Star Trek. You're right.
It makes your head hurt the way that they butcher time travel and paradoxes in Trek, and but I've always said, it's a fallback position for Star Trek, because give them a good time travel episode, because everybody loves a good time travel episode.
But see, that's the inconsistency right there from the Reverse Flash Returns, is keeping that Eobard Thawne in the lockup starts killing Cisco, but even then, keeping him in the containment, even though it's killing Cisco, it should be destabilizing the entire timeline, not just killing Cisco.
This is the problem with that. I agree with you on that, because it raises. Here's the thing. I thought it was clever what they did on the Flash to address this issue, because it was like a novel approach to time travel that I had not seen before. But then I wound up falling into the same spot that you are in, son, and saying is, well, now you've just created more theoretical problems with this whole idea here. So how you going to resolve that? And I think what it comes down to at the end of the day is that we geek sci-fi fans are just way too detail oriented.
I call it popcorn quantum physics.
It's exactly what it is. It's a perfect example, a perfect metaphor. Popcorn quantum physics. I love it. That's perfect. Right.
I
there.
coined it today. Let's put it on. Let's make it. This is my sort of patent pending thing.
Call coincidence, Ron.
But yeah, so the point of let's not dwell too much into this. But I just want. But son, seriously, just wait and see.
So the next thing is, how did nobody think to credit Tony Todd for voicing Zoom? Because that voice is unmistakably Tony Todd.
Yep.
Oh, they did when at the time it happened. Remember, you're late to the party.
It's at the time it was well known. Like, it was generally.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, because like I'm watching this and I never see Tony Todd's name in the credits.
Oh, it was highly publicized on the internet.
Okay, I understand, but it's not in the credits.
Well, if it's not, that may have been his choice. I mean, would have to have been his choice.
Okay. It's like the first time I hear Zoom speak, I can't tell if it's just a modulated Tony Todd or if it's a voice modulated Mark Hamill, because it sounds like a little bit of both the first time you hear his voice. Because
you never know.
It wavers the first time you hear it, but the more he shows up, the more you hear it's actually Tony Todd.
Right, and the thing about it is too is for a long time I was actually convinced it was my 7-year-old's deathcore voice that he uses just to freak us all the fuck out. So.
Okay.
Yeah, ask him to sing Hallelujah in that. It's the most terrifying thing you've ever heard, yet hilarious at the same time, because that's how he rolls.
Wow. So, all right. So, son, at this point, you're on episode, 15, maybe?
They have just rescued... they have just rescued what's-her-name from... No, they've just rescued what's-her-face from Earth 2. And Barry's promised to come back for the Man in the Mask, which I've already got my fingers in the speculation pie and thinking he's the real Jay Garrick, because every time Zoom shows up, Jay Garrick's not back at the other place.
Cheater. I'm speculating.
There is no spoon. Oh, wait a minute, wrong series.
Well, no, it's like, the cuts are too perfect when they go to Earth 2, because Jay has to go and lay down conveniently when the Zoom re-shows up when they cut back to Earth 2.
I ain't telling you nothing. You watch the show like the rest of us.
And we're going to assume you didn't cheat with the Wikipedia and you're just trying to make it sound like you're smart.
No.
All right.
I think it's way. And have you seen the back of Zoom's jacket? It looks almost like the front of Jay's The Flash jacket.
George, can I ask you a question real quick? When
you can ask me a million questions. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, when you watched season 2, did you watch it as it aired, or did you binge?
Oh no! I watched it as it airs. I was actually homeless the first time, staying at a place. And I was staying at this place, and it was a sort of a transitional place run by the VA. And I said to them, they had this one TV, and I remember when that episode was going to air. In fact, I think I remember the name of the episode. It was something about the race of two flashes or best of two worlds. Something. No, it's something that had to do with the
Flash. It's Flash of Two Worlds.
Flash. Thank you.
Like the original. That was what the original comic title was back in the 60s.
Thank you. I remember that at the time. I mean, I'm a huge DC total fanatic, and I remember going. I knew that they were going to be doing this episode, and I knew that Jay Garrick. I saw a thing online where they were making a mock cover out of that scene where they're running between the brick wall, going to rescue Patty, and it was sort of a mockery of the original cover when they first had the two Flashes meet and do whatever. And I remember saying to myself, "Oh no!" In fact, on my Facebook, I found this the other day. I sat there with my phone and I recorded the TV because this wasn't my TV; it was a community TV. and I made them watch that episode. Now, they had never watched The Flash. It was funny, these other vets. And they were like, what the heck are we watching? And I'm like, no, you guys don't get it. And I kind of instructed them the whole time before the show aired.
To be fair, you do say that a lot, George.
No, I
you just don't get it. You don't get it.
I said, no. You guys remember The Flash? Remember this? And I said, okay, so back in 1930s, Jay Garrick was the first Flash. He had a helmet that was like supposed to be like Mercury or Hermes, Mercury, the god of speed and messages or whatever. And this was the character. So they're kind of recreating this and introducing the multiverse. And so I went through this whole spiel to sell it. And as soon as it aired, and I saw him running, and he had the helmet on, because they showed the helmet the season before, as you know, son. And I told you that was going to be a hint. But when they showed that flashback of him, haha, pun intended, that cover, I was like, oh, I see what you guys are doing there. And damn, it was good. So I was very happy as a geek.
Well, my reason I asked that question, because from my perspective, because as much I watched the first season straight through, like when it aired, but the seasons after that I've been binging because my plate has been full. I just haven't had a chance to catch any until the end of the year. I think your perspective on what you're catching, I think it changes when you're binging. I think you catch things a lot more.
I think that's really true, and you're seeing actually a change in the way series storytelling is taking place. Exactly for that reason, because
I agree
because on Netflix people are seeing things all at once, and your storytelling has to change because you know that people are picking up right where it left off.
Yep,
that's exactly a good point. It. You also have to take into consideration that with Netflix, where they drop everything at once. And you know what? I will give some respect to all the people that review and react to things such as Iron Fist Season 2 or whatever. They don't. I find it interesting when you binge, when they drop all the season at once. I find it interesting that the spoilers don't happen the way they do if you do it one at a time. It's almost like even the trolls don't want to, like, they don't have time to, like, oh wait, they just plopped it on us. Let's go through it and like figure out what to spoil, because nobody knows what episode you're on at the time that they try to spoil it.
Right, exactly. There's no real spoilers because the format for the Marvel series, it's funny if you compare the way Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is done to the way that the Marvel series and Netflix are done. It's entirely different.
Well, one is episodic per week, and the other one they drop it all at once.
Well, yeah,
that's what I mean.
But Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., they went from going episodic in season 1 to serial arc through seasons 2 through 5, and but it's still there's a lot of twists and turns along the way. That whereas the format on Netflix, it's much more like Discovery, like one continuous story arc. It's just like each episode is like an hour of a 13-hour long show, basically, is what it comes down to. That's kind of the feel to it. Like Stranger Things, for example. If you look at Stranger Things, like season 1, that was literally an 8-hour movie, is what that was, just broken up into 8 parts, and that's how Netflix rolls, and with these series, and that's a difference where there's really no such thing as a cliffhanger through those, really. I mean, yeah, there's some twists and turns, and I grant you, and there are some really compelling things they do with them. But still, the cliffhanger that you get from a weekly series is a completely different. It's a different way of telling the story.
And I agree, and that's interesting because what is the better way to tell the story? Do you drop like 5 or 6 or 7, 8, 9, 10 episodes, and then like wait for people to catch up, or do you do it week by week, like you said with Discovery, even though it's a streaming thing, like, and then everybody talks about that last scene with the Enterprise coming up to the Discovery, up till, just for an example. So
right.
So my point is that the Flash. So not to go off track here. So Son has kind of been, getting into the second season, and one of the things I just want to point out is that the CW, and I'm going to lead. This is going to be a subject we're going to be leading into in a minute. The CW has good writers, and they know what they're doing. So, off that note, I want to start with one topic. You know what? No, I'm going to start with this because we just talked about the CW. So I'm going to start with this topic instead. So the CW just recently cast Lois Lane, as well as they announced the villain, or one of them, I don't know if there's more than one, in the new crossover is going to be Mr. Freeze's wife. So they hit us with all this news. And also, Carlos, you pointed out there's been some interesting things about the teaser. Carlos, you lead us on. Lead us in. What do you think about this?
Well, I think that obviously the fact that they're teasing us about the crossover so early means that they're putting a lot of planning into it, and really the cross promotion I think is smart. It gets the anticipation up. I think also they hope that it means audiences will cross over sooner to some of the other shows that aren't doing as well in terms of ratings. So that's all pretty smart. From a storytelling perspective, I think it's great. I mean, I don't know that I'm that enamored of Mr. Freeze's wife as a as a villain, but at the same time,
especially considering she was always meant to make Freeze be a sympathetic character as a villain,
which suggests it's pre-Freeze. But keep going.
Well, my hope is, as they've done, previously, is that they're going to take exactly the kind of skepticism and of fans like myself and flip it on its head and end up doing something interesting and intriguing. So that's what I'm crossing my fingers and hoping for, that they're taking something that's pretty lame and turning it, because of those low expectations, into something cool.
It also suggests that they're trying to focus on, not focus, but they have a sort of, they're trying to introduce Gotham into the CW. So we already knew that with Batwoman, and they did talk about that. They're like, we're going to bring our version of Gotham, and nobody knows yet exactly which Earth, and so forth. But the fact that they're now announcing that she, Mr. Freeze's wife, who, by the way, is being played by Stephen Amell, who plays the Arrow, his wife, she's going to play him. Her. She is going to play her, I'm sorry.
Wait, one more time. Who's playing who? What now?
Okay, Stephen Amell, who plays Arrow.
Right.
His wife is going to be playing Mrs. Freeze.
Oh, okay.
His wife in real life.
Right.
Okay.
I'm sorry, his wife, exactly. So we don't know, is the time frame, because, just like with the Gotham show on Fox, where this falls into the timeline of the historic comic situation, is this before she went into ice or after? And they could be taking a new spin on the story in order to make it sort of their version of the story of Mr. Freeze and Mrs. Freeze.
Yeah, I think whatever they choose to do, they're going to do their own thing. I don't think they're going to allow themselves to be, constrained by what's being done on a different show by different producers.
And they've already proven that. Absolutely.
I would really enjoy it if it is actually an other Earth, because with me watching Flash, Earth 2 is the retro future Earth with all the, that 1950s kind of feel. I would really like the 90s Art Deco Batman Earth. Thank you.
Nobody knows.
The Earth
Go ahead.
is kind of a different. It's a different. You ever play the game BioShock? That's
kind of Art Deco, yeah.
That's what the Earth 2 kind of reminds me of. It's like the style is perpetually trapped in the past, but their technology is so advanced.
That actually tracks with the original comic books too.
Yes.
In the original DC comic books, Earth 2 was presumed to be about 20 years more advanced than Earth 1. So, but it did preserve a lot of the same, older looking technology, sort of a retro look. But things like, I remember particularly one comic book made a point of showing that South Africa apartheid had been eradicated in on Earth 2, while of course it was still going strong on Earth 1 and our own Earth, which I guess they call Earth Prime. So it's just another example of how they just sort of looked ahead 20 years and said, okay, in 20 years this is the kind of stuff that might be happening, and also the kind of technology we might see. And it's just far enough ahead that it's still accessible but has its own look and feel.
Now, I don't know. I'm not familiar with the actress that has been cast as Lois Lane as far as the other portion of this news goes. But I looked at the pictures, and I kind of wish I was familiar with her her whole filmography as far as seeing her in scenes. But I have this faith in the CW as far as casting.
They're
And
fine.
she looks like she kind of looks like Margot Kidder.
Yeah,
To me.
she's. I think I have no problem with that casting whatsoever. And I have to say, in general, I've been very pleased with the CW. This is, I assume that these are all Berlanti productions, and
Exactly.
doing
Greg Berlanti is the Berlanti-verse.
right, and they've done an excellent job of bringing in act. Because here's the thing you got to keep in mind when you're talking about CW. CW is the lowest rated, they're the lowest rated network, but it's they're the offshoot, the bastard child of WB and UPN.
True.
And we're talking about shows that generally they appeal to a much younger crowd, and they do an amazing job with small budgets, because and especially on these 22 episode seasons, which just blow my mind they're able to do this. So they do a very good job of what I would say. And this reminds me of what they did in the past with Trek in the 90s, where they were able to just cast these outstanding, just professional character actors, people that are just that they don't come at a particularly high cost, but they bring gravitas to the screen in whatever role they play. I've always been thoroughly impressed with the job they've done on all these shows. I mean, even if you're looking at I never heard of Stephen Amell before Arrow. I thought he was from the beginning that he was perfectly cast for the Arrow that they wanted to make. They wanted to make their version of the Green Arrow.
Definitely.
With Deathstroke, it's still one of my favorite characters in that entire franchise. So when we talk about casting for any of those shows, I have complete faith that they know what they're doing in that department. They always seem to hit it out of the park with all the actors that they bring in. So that's my take on that.
Okay,
I
wait.
agree.
Well, who did you say this verse was of?
Earth 1, not Prime.
No. The director. Like, we have the JJ verse, right?
Greg Berlanti.
Okay,
Yes.
because in my head you say that, and in my head I'm only thinking of Bruce Valanche, and I'm like, no, that can't be
Oh
true.
my god.
That would be amazing.
Totally different.
That would be very
The
different.
writing would be way farther out.
Oh, and by the way, it's just a bit of trivia for you. Bruce Valanche is a credited producer and writer on the Star Wars Holiday Special. No joke.
Oh, you know what they have in common?
This explains why the
true.
holiday special is way out there.
But you know what they have in common? Hair. I mean, come on, I'm not joking. Anyways, I'm not even joking there. But anyways, oh my god. Yeah, I get he kind of is yeah. So anyways, the holiday special. Wow, that's a whole different subject because I'm sorry, but Chewie's son.
Why don't we bring that up when we get closer to the holidays? I think
that needs an entire episode dedicated.
Yeah, exactly.
Without question, I could go on and on about the holidays, but
Okay,
I'll
be honest. I'll be honest. I have only ever seen like the Wookiee thing from the holiday episode. That's it. Just like just the beginning where the little child is playing with toys. That's it. That's all I've ever seen from it.
I am borderline obsessed with the holiday special. It's a
borderline.
yeah, okay, I'm very obsessed with it. Yeah.
I mean,
you're like George from last week with James Cawley.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
no, I wouldn't go that far.
I
That's
want Lumpy to come to my house during
Lumpy
Christmas.
is Chewbacca's son, and you know what? That's just the way. That's canon in my head. I'm sorry.
I would just like to say that from now on, Shawn's nickname should be Lumpy.
Perfect.
Wait. This sounds like Goldilocks and the Three Wookiees.
I mean,
Lumpy, chewy, and smooth.
Oh wait, Sean, have you never seen Ewok Adventure? Caravan of whatever?
I did.
I've seen a few of them.
I actually kind of liked that one.
But that was kind of Goldilocks and the Three Ewoks. I'm sorry. Oh wait, Wookiees. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, but my joke is it's Goldilocks and the Three Wookiees.
Yeah,
Lumpy, chewy, and smooth.
No, but the Ewok Adventure was the opposite. They were the Ewoks, not the Wookiees. So I screwed up there. Same idea.
Well, see, and now we have to now South Park comes into play with Johnny Cochran and the Chewbacca defense, and how can
I'm not familiar with that. You're gonna have to link it.
You've never seen that? Yeah, it's his Chewbacca defense. It's nonsensical, and it basically comes down to how his defense for everything is how can an 8-foot Wookiee live on a planet with 3-foot Ewoks? That's the whole defense, and that's how he wins his cases. That's the entire premise of it.
I could really geek out and explain why, but there's no point because that defeats the point. So let's move on.
Let's move on.
Let's talk about Henry Cavill because he's been all over the friggin' news so much more than Superman flies over my ass. Seriously.
Well, you know my theory.
I didn't know you had superflies over your ass, Jake.
I mean,
you might want to wipe.
Superfly.
You might want to wipe.
I might, but with his cape, because seriously, Henry Cavill, is he freaking done with Superman, or isn't he? I'm really confused. You know what? Every single media outlet out there, and I'm not even exaggerating. Well, okay, maybe a little bit. Collider, IGN, all these other sort of in the past credible news outlets were fooled.
Wow. Sort of credible.
Sort of.
Wow.
He's out. He's not Superman, and then all of a sudden it turns out they try to tweet. Well, no, and then he's not actually. They're not actually saying no. They're saying no decisions have been made. So all the outlets are going. He's out, and like it's crazy. Is Henry Cavill no longer Superman, or is he not? Let me start with somebody who's actually been in the industry a bit more than each of us, which is Carlos Pedraza. What do you think, Carlos?
I was afraid you were going to choose me first.
Well, you're the most credible person to go to first.
Well, I don't have any particular inside knowledge about this other than just, how things like this typically, tend to work out. And, a lot of times, right. There's definitely politics that surround a lot of these things and a lot of sort of positioning. You're seeing the same thing happen with Chris Pine and Kirk and Chris Hemsworth with Daddy Kirk. It's the same kind of thing where, I mean, they're technically out, but are they really out? That this is Hollywood. This is a place where compromise and negotiation is the currency of the day. And, what it does is it sets up negotiating positions from which people move forward or don't, depending on how things go. And, that's certainly one of the possibilities I think that's happening here.
Thanks.
Why did
you pick up that bad habit?
Oh God, we're picking up his other stuff.
Oh, sorry about that. Hold on.
No. Let it go. If you have to talk about Star Trek or anything with these people, we'll just let it go.
This is the podcast version of Cinema Verite.
Right.
He's picking up a pizza right now, so yeah.
Ooh, now I'm hungry. Thanks a lot, Shawn. I mean, flash drive. I mean, lumpy.
Hey, now, in fairness, Carlos, you made a pot roast on one of my shows.
That is true, and that was a damn good pot roast.
And I asked you to let it go and do it and let it rest, whatever, and then we'll do the show.
Did let it rest. Resting is good for
Was
pot
it good?
Roast,
Did you taste it?
Oh, it was tasty. That the gravy was amazing.
He also took pictures of it and put it on Facebook.
Oh, that's right.
I did.
That's
It was my first pot roast. I was very proud of me.
Yeah. It came out good. Gordon Ramsay would be proud.
Now, please note, by the way, that I did not put it on Instagram, where I have a firm no pictures of food policy.
To be honest with you, I absolutely hate Instagram. The only reason I even look at it is because of my girlfriend. So I'm just saying.
I like them both. They just serve different purposes for me. So
I gotcha.
Facebook, food, Instagram, artsy fartsiness.
Well,
go ahead, Shawn.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, on the Henry Cavill thing, here's how I look at it. I was going to say the same thing Carlos did, that, you know, this isn't the first time we've heard about an actor that's a lead, a recognizable lead in a franchise. The story being that, you know, they're out. But, you know, as I understand it, number one, he's got a 4-picture requirement anyway. Okay, so he's got at least one more that he's required by contract. He's supposed to do. The problem that they have right now is that the DC extended universe is kind of in flux with their films. So who knows? It could be 5 years down the road before it's really even an issue. I think
that's a good point, actually.
You know, I think what we're probably seeing here is, like Carlos says, like, you know, there's my personal opinion is, you know, it seemed like within hours of that story breaking, that there was the next story that was Michael B. Jordan being considered for the role. So
yeah, but that rumor literally came out of nowhere. It literally, it came out of somebody's ass.
To be honest with you,
you see this all the time in genre reporting, and I use the term reporting loosely, where, you know, people they get this idea in their head and they find, you know, 2 pieces of stock photography and then slap it up on a website and, you know, add a question mark at the end of the headline, and you know, and
this leads to that reporting mantra. If it asks, if a headline asks a question, the answer is generally no.
No. Yeah.
I always do the opposite, though, in my headlines. If I ask a question, the answer is usually yes.
Yeah, but Carlos, your type of reporting though is different than the.
Yeah, yours is legit.
No. What I mean is, well, yeah, it is. But I'm just saying. What I'm trying to say is, you're not reacting to the popular opinion thing. Okay, that didn't come out right either. You're actually reporting facts. They're reporting speculation based because it's the same with IGN when they report like Last Jedi theories. This person said this, so Rey must have a double lightsaber. Everybody's trying to fill in the gaps just to get, to keep, because some of them have jobs.
They want to be the first. That's the
no.
It's not even the first.
They just want to get.
They want clicks. They want clicks.
Well, they have to get paid for that. Some of them get paid for that, is what I'm saying.
Well, you saw it. It's a natural.
You saw it this week with the publication of that TNG cast reunion dinner, and some writer, I think it was an IO9, I'm not sure where. I don't want to slur. But it was on a bigger website. Took that photograph and took the fact that there's a new Picard show, and it's like, is this a possibility that the TNG cast was going to be part of the Picard show? And it's like, the two have nothing to do with each other. There is zero evidence whatsoever that the two are connected. But you've got a photo and you've got a new show, so what better way to to fool people into clicking your headline than to conflate them? And you see that this is why in genre reporting.
And this is why people more and more consider the news to be fake across the board.
Well, my thing is this. I talked about this on my social media, but just to reiterate it here, I have zero. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Jodie Whittaker, for example, being the new Doctor. That's the way the show has always been designed. It's like he changes, he, she, whatever. I have no problem in general if they want to reimagine Superman. And somebody pointed out to me, well, they've already had Black Superman, not Kal-El/Clark Kent, though. There's a difference. It's okay. You could have Idris Elba as James Bond. I don't care.
I'm down for that, by the way. You know that.
Well, my thing is...
Me too, by the way.
Yeah, seriously, and my wife will tell you this. I have two man crushes: Idris Elba and Jason Isaacs. Those are my two. Idris Elba's James Bond.
And they said he was going to be the next Doctor Who. He was supposed to be number 13 instead of, I'm sorry, 14 instead of Jodie. But my point is that I have no problem with that. But in this case, when they spread this rumor immediately after, I mean, so you're telling me the coincidence is you guys heard a rumor based on whatever that Henry Cavill's not going to be Superman, and you immediately say Michael Jordan is going to be in reports to be the next considered Superman. You don't even have any facts to back it up. You just want to throw that out there just to get clicks.
I'll be honest. I would be 100% okay with the real Michael Jordan being Superman.
Yeah, I know. But listen, so, well, what I'm trying to say to you is that the thing is the timing, and first and second of all, if they were going to actually reimagine Superman as this actor, I have no problem.
But see, the thing is, here's the thing, though. I mean, even talking about it, we're granting a certain shine of legitimacy to this when it's just they're just troublemakers. They're just trying to rile up the mob,
the internet going, yeah.
Because people love to just react to things like this. And,
yep. I especially. Go ahead.
My theory was that WB leaked both stories. That was my theory.
No, I actually don't think that's true now.
I don't think that's true either. I don't think that's true.
I think it was a leak within, and that what happened was Cavill was going to leave, but they weren't prepared yet for a public statement. But someone leaked it, and they were like, they did what I call a non-reaction. Okay, I'm going to say this right now before people accuse me of copying someone else's opinion. I like the podcaster John Campea. I like Collider, and I'm sure most of you guys know who. John Campea said it was a non-reaction, and I'm not just agreeing with him just because I like him, because oftentimes I don't agree with him. However, I do agree with him this time because they did the same thing when Ben Affleck said he was in or out as Batman. And then eventually it came out, it was confirmed he's out. But until it was confirmed, it was the same situation we're going through with Cavill right now. The only other evidence that supports that Cavill's out is the fact that he signed on for The Witcher for a series. There's a lot of support for this evidence if you were to document it like a detective. That's all I'm saying.
But again, we're back to the issue of the DCEU being in flux, and who knows the next time you're going to see Superman appear on screen anyway. I mean, look, Henry's got to eat.
Which is exactly the point. Yeah, I mean, that's exactly the point, is that, let's say that Henry Cavill is gone, and I think probably the chances are better than 50% that he's going to end up not continuing in the franchise. He's got other things on his plate. He's aging out. He's, even though I think he was a great casting move for Superman, he didn't do great. Not because he wasn't a good actor, but because of Zack Snyder and his particular take on the universe, which I think was completely out of step with the times and what audiences wanted. And and unfortunately, he never got a chance to shine in Superman.
Well,
instead, from the first. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, at the same time, this is what's interesting. At the same time that Henry Cavill, like what you were just saying, like maybe this wasn't the sinking, I guess I would say. We got Tyler Hoechlin, is that how you pronounce his name? I think
it's Hoechlin or Hoechlin.
I'm sorry, Hoechlin. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing and butchering his last name, but the guy who plays Superman in the CW universe, who's going to be on the crossover soon, this guy pops up in the middle of this entire situation and shows us a different Superman portrayal. So it tells me that, in fact, it's kind of funny because his casting and his doing that show made me realize that I'm starting to understand why they are always reluctant to simultaneously allow the roles of certain characters to be done because it confuses people. The thing about Superman is that Tyler, he portrayed him one way and Henry portrayed him another way. So when you look at now the situation where, okay, we might not have Henry anymore. If Christopher Reeve had still been alive years ago, and they just decided, or whatever, we're going to recast Superman. At the time he was still playing Superman, people would have been like, no, we can't picture anybody else as playing Superman. But this now makes me reflect on the fact that when I look at Tyler on Supergirl, and I look at Henry, yes, I can imagine someone else is playing Superman. Does that make any sense?
Sure, but you have to remember that Christopher Reeve's portrayal of Superman was after Superman 2. There was a huge gap in time, and when he came back for the subsequent sequels, they were awful. They were just
that's true.
Terrible. I mean, he was great, but as a series, as a franchise, it sort of petered out after that, and we went a long time before we saw any more Superman. Decades, really.
Superman
in the meantime, also in the DC universe, you have Batman, which they've had movies come out fairly regularly over the decades, and they've recast again and again and again and again. People are fine with this. Just as long as the stories are good and the actors are well chosen, people will put up with it. We understand that the Flash we see, we can deal with the fact that the Flash we see on television isn't the same Flash we saw in Justice League. People can handle it,
I think the biggest problem... Go ahead, Carlos. Continue.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I think the biggest problem with the DC universes, plural, is that there doesn't seem to be. It's a Marvel's credit. They have this at the DC universe doesn't a unifying vision for it, and
nobody's disputing that for sure.
Well, they used to. It was Zack Snyder's vision, and it was awful.
Well, that's true, but I think there's when you look at the television franchises for Marvel, whether it be Netflix or whether it be Agents of Shield or Agent Carter on ABC, and combined with the cinematic universe, they're different for their genres, for not their genre, for the mediums. But there is definitely there's a unified vision to it. There's a unified universe to it, and the problem I see with DC in general is that it's kind of been all over the place in general. I mean, I think we can all agree that if they were to take the Berlanti verse and were to able to,
tried. That was the problem.
A film universe out of it. Look, if they had done,
I totally agree with you. Shawn. I mean, the issue is that what you see on television, thanks to Greg Berlanti, is sort of a unified vision for what this universe looks like. Unfortunately, the people who make the decisions about the cinematic universe aren't interested in handing that over to a TV writer and producer.
No,
they have, plus. Berlanti's been working now for a long time in building up this universe on television, just as Marvel had spent a lot of time building up its cinematic universe, and whereas Warner Brothers was not willing to do that. Once they saw how well Marvel was doing, they tried to speed up and catch up as quickly as they could, and they just weren't ready for that. They just didn't. They didn't pay the attention to the development that Marvel did. Marvel started slow and sped
steady
up with each slow and steady. Thank you. And Warner Brothers didn't. They jumped in both feet first. They handed it all over to Zack Snyder, and I think that, in retrospect, was a mistake.
I agree. I think there's the head of ship that Disney, Marvel, they've been very good about containing it and getting across their type of vision, because it's like WB said, okay, we'll bring Zack Snyder. He's well known. He's well known. He's up and coming. He does big flashy films, and Zack Snyder's vision, he wants to make this dark because WB's like, well, you know what? That's exactly the opposite of how Marvel.
It's like hiring Michael Bay to make Transformers.
Well, well, and you know what you're getting, but they've at the end of the day with the Marvel, you've got you've got a couple of things going for you. You've got consistency in character development. You get a different style for it.
Well, you also have the Billions from Disney. That doesn't hurt either.
Well, I mean, but you've also got people that realize that we're going to make.
Well, what I mean is that WB is. I'm sorry. I'll let you finish, but while I can think of it, WB's the reason why. Okay, the reason why Marvel Disney doesn't worry about this shit is because it isn't just they're worried about the movie not doing well. They have so much money to fall back on. If it's a financial failure,
it didn't start out that way. It didn't start out.
Oh, that's true.
It started out very deliberately. They didn't have a ton of money. What they did was they started out deliberately. They always
they did have a plan. You're right.
Yes. And when you look at it, it all starts with Iron Man and really
exactly.
with Robert Downey Jr. because we got a few key factors at play here. You've got the sci-fi comic book factor, which is there, and it's good, and it's accessible to all audiences, and you've got the character development, which between Robert Downey Jr. and the rest of that cast,
Gwyneth Paltrow, yeah,
right, and then on top of that, you've got the other thing that links is like. There's humor. There's the Shakespeare. I don't want to go so far as to call the Marvel Cinematic Universe Shakespearean, but you have your comic relief there, okay? And there's plenty of that.
What's actual levity rather than forced levity, like in the DC universe?
It was organic.
Mm-hmm. So it's like, when like the Guardians of the Galaxy, we can, by the time the first film came, was it 2014 when the first Guardians of the Galaxy film came out, which is, I'd say by far the lightest of the franchise up to that point. We're at the point where, yeah, we buy this. This makes sense. You can have all this madness going around,
and they were introduced.
You got a 3-foot raccoon that's cracking jokes at the same time and during all this madness, and we get that. It makes sense to us because of the way, as Carlos says, it's been so deliberate how they've gotten us here. And,
go ahead.
Well, and that's where I think it's they keep trying to do the same thing over and over again with DC and in that extended universe and. It's just not appealing. Look, I tried to get through Justice League. I really did. I got through about 30 minutes of it, and I was like, I can't. This is just boring the shit out of me.
It does get better, but I totally get it. In fact, Shawn, it's kind of funny. A few episodes ago, I think Carlos, you, me, and whoever, we talked about. Did you ever? I couldn't remember if you actually saw it or you were going to see it.
Which?
Justice League.
Oh, yeah, I saw it recently.
Okay. So, to Shawn's point, I'm just saying, he's right. It should have been, an exciting moment, but because they were trying to kind of catch up, with Avengers and the success, they were like, wait, what did these guys just do? Oh, only slowly actually build up a shared universe and actually earn their place as far as people going, oh my God, this is the culmination of everything we've been waiting for. Whereas DC they were reacting to it. They were like, oh wait,
right.
What do we do? Oh, let's throw Superman and Batman together and make this big artistic graphic thing at San Diego Comic-Con and make everybody in Hall H go crazy and hope that works. And then they, did what they did. So,
and then we get Martha? What did you say?
I mean, it's kind of funny, though, when you look back on it now. So, I have a friend named Martha.
That's the problem in the divide between marketing schemes. See, what you have now is the people who market hype versus the actual product. And Marvel has been really good about marketing a product and generating hype because the product is good. Where DC has always been really good at marketing hype, and then the product comes out and it's severely lackluster.
Well, and I think part of the problem with Warner Brothers is that they're not employing their best assets at this. Because if you look at their cartoon universe, it worked really well,
Yes.
And they've got some really great writers, comic book writers, who've been Jeff Johns, he's proven himself even, in television and film. And there are others, but the point is that they have points of success around their universe. The CW, their
Jeff Johns has also
animated
worked
universe
with the CW, right, Carlos?
Yeah, he has. He's written for some of those shows. And my point is, they know how to do this right. The problem was they were too impatient. They didn't want to do what it took, which was take time to develop these properties in a way that built an audience. That forced them to have to do something that was a big splash and that had to grab people's attention. And unfortunately, they bit off more than they can chew. And I think you see that in Batman vs. Superman. You see that in Justice League. There are things in both films that I really like. But overall,
agreed.
I mean, I just thought, for example, that choosing Darkseid as the big bad in Justice League was dumb. He
wasn't even in it. That was leading up. Step one. I want to point out one thing, Carlos, based on what you just said. Before I forget, I will say one thing. Marvel has one thing going for them that's above and beyond what DC has done. Now,
just one.
Well, hang on. I think you might be surprised about what I'm about to say. So DC, as far as even before they try to say, "Hey, let's make a cohesive universe," okay? How many people have played Batman? How many people have played Superman? How many people have played? Okay, that's about it actually. But with Marvel,
Spider-Man.
Oh no! In the no, that's not fair. In the Marvel Cinematic Universe, since day one, they have the only person they've ever recast is one character, and that would be nope. Oh wait, no, not in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. No, it's Brody.
The Hulk.
No, Brody.
The Hulk.
Well, I mean, but that was people. But when Edward Norton, that was just so I know technically it counts, but I mean technically from when the Marvel. MCU
technically means you have to count it, George.
All right.
Yeah.
So
they're not as brilliant as you're trying to portray.
No, I'm not saying brilliant. I'm not saying brilliant. However, what I'm trying to say is, which characters have been recast? Only one. Iron Man's War Machine. He had issues with the producers or whatever. But War Machine, the guy who played him in the first movie, Iron Man 1, he changed to the guy who played him in Iron Man from number 2 all the way until the Infinity War. And the only reason why was there was an issue that happened. But Marvel has tried to say, they tried, this is what my main thing, to say, no, this is the guy that's going to be, this is Steve Rogers, Chris Evans is Captain America. Now, I'm not saying they will never recast him.
Of course they will. They're going to recast him. Chris Evans wants them to recast.
I know, but it's been 10 years.
He doesn't want to play Captain America for the rest of his life.
I understand. I'm just saying, Marvel's tried. They tried to say, let's keep everybody in the family.
It doesn't. Again, I think they've been brilliant at this, but it's not like an overarching, diabolical, wonderful plan. It's just smart business. You sign someone to a multi-picture deal because if it works, then you've got them locked in. It's as simple as it is. That's just smart business. It's not like some incredibly well-crafted. It's smart, but it's not genius.
I'd like to add two things before we move on. Okay, this goes back to the Agent Carter thing. So when they first put out all the poster image art of Agent Carter without the title of the show, Agent Carter, so it's just Carter in her red hat and blue dress. I'm the only person who's not really been that invested in these universes to know who that person is. So my first thought was, holy shit, they're making a prologue to Carmen Sandiego. How many people would legit sit and watch something like that?
You're right, but let me throw this out to you real quick before we move on. Do you remember Captain America's Civil War?
Yes.
Do you remember the scene in the funeral when he was saying goodbye to the woman he started making out with, the blonde girl Sharon? Do you remember how that was her aunt and the guys were doing that bro moment and watching him kiss the girl? Remember that part?
Yes.
In the actual comics, the significance of that is about, I would say, fairly 200 times more than what the movies did, because because the character of Sharon Carter, that was not just her niece. She's meant to be identical to her. So when he was all taken aback in the comics, it was a big deal, and throughout the entire, all the way up until Civil War. But in the movies, they downplayed that. They downplayed that.
I will have to believe you.
Because it would have been a distraction, you know.
It would have. I
That's
agree.
exactly it. It would have. Again, we're back to the unifying vision of the Marvel approach to this, the Disney Marvel approach to this.
I have no problem. I'm just pointing that out to Son. That's all.
And I want to point something out too, though, that you had brought up way back in the beginning when we first the show, of how DC Comics are so much better than the Marvel. Well, I think there's a reason for this. When I think about this, it's that this is the same reason why the Nolan verse for Batman works so well. Why the Donner verse works.
I'm actually not a fan of the Nolan Batman. I'm a huge Batman dude. Just so people know.
Well, okay. But as to why
the point is, it was successful because it was unified and coherent.
And I think DC has done over the years a better job of really developing individual characters, and for in the comics, that is. I think this has always been my assessment, for really developing them, making each character their own universe, as it were. I mean, because I can think of when I was a kid, I wanted to when we were playing as kids, I wanted to be Batman. I wanted to be Superman. I wasn't thinking about all the other side characters, everything else, and all the other side teams that are they're so common in
it's almost been
Marvel universe. In the Marvel
100 years, so many characters.
You've got your Avengers, you've got your X-Men, you've got your Alpha Flight, you've got all the X Force, all these other teams, and trying to get Guardians of the Galaxy too, and all this stuff, trying to bring it all together is what Marvel does in that. Whereas I think DC tends to, in the comics, has more on the individual characters in their particular universe. It's kind of like why I like Gotham so much, the series, because it's no bullshit. I mean, it's completely cut off from the rest of the DC universe.
It's actually,
which I think works very well for that character, for that entire that entire particular universe there. So
sure, that's always been the defining difference between the two comics companies, is that DC was, each character basically inhabited their own universe, and any crossovers were one-offs, whereas Marvel from almost the get-go was designed to be a shared universe, and you had overlaps and crossovers happening all the time. It was clear that you were living in the same universe, and each side has its pros and cons.
Speaking of crossovers, hold on, Shawn. Well, if you don't mind, I mean, we've talked about DC to death, but with the time we have, I'm not really worried about the time, to be honest with you. But
I would like to make one more point, just to finally cap it off.
Sure.
The funniest thing from this Cavill Jordan thing has been seeing all the white people on Twitter go, "It's about time we had a black man who could outrun a speeding bullet," and I'm like, Jesus. Literally have a dude who is bulletproof on Netflix.
Wow.
And I'm like,
well,
what okay, what are you doing? Because this seems kind of racist.
Well, the racist people are the ones saying it, so don't look beyond the forest for the trees. I mean,
well, no, I mean these are all the people who have blue check marks and have their pronouns in their Twitter profile.
If they have to make that statement, ignore them, or either that or take in what they're saying.
It's hilarious to me, because these are the people who say they're not racist, and they say something like that, and I'm like, wow, really? Yeah, and you forget that you literally have a bulletproof black man on Netflix?
Yeah, that's that kind of soft racism where they don't even realize that they're doing it type thing, and that's just offensive. And you're right. I mean, Luke Cage. Luke Cage is a great character. I thoroughly enjoyed the first season of that show. And the thing about it is, what's interesting about Luke Cage is, again, that it's kind of the way they've done that is it's really kind of cut off from the rest of the Marvel universe, but still part of it, because
it's actually he's huge though in the comics though.
Right, and it's funny because it's a very ethnocentric series, but yet it's still incredibly accessible. As is the character, and again, it's another feather in the cap for the folks at Marvel for being able to do that, and bringing more awareness, to different perspectives, the diversity.
I'm gonna be possibly racist here. It's like watching a Tyler Perry superhero.
Son and I were actually chit-chatting last night.
Not.
Yeah, God, really. But before we switch to our next subject, because Shawn actually
Luke Cage meets Medea.
Oh my God!
That would be an awesome rampage.
So, Son, remember last night when we were? No, that sounded bad. Do you remember when we were talking last night? And we were talking about the show that's coming next on Netflix, which is Heroes for Hire. It's not next, but it's coming up.
Yeah, you mentioned that.
Yeah, well, so, Son, I was pointing out to her, well, they're not going to do Defenders Season 2 because I guess the Defenders was a failure. But they don't look at it like, oh, that doesn't mean... So that brand, Defenders, okay, that didn't work. So they're...
Interestingly, I don't think it worked in the comics either, so...
Yeah, I agree. But they're doing Heroes for Hire, and here's the thing. So I was pointing out to Son, I looked at the list of the latest lineup, because they have like 4 of them, I think, Son, and the latest lineup is almost identical to everything either Netflix already owns or they announced was coming. And so it has Misty Knight, it has Luke Cage, it has Iron Fist, it has it doesn't have Jessica Jones, but she's like a little bit above the street level. And then they have like a couple of characters like Moon Knight and Ghost Rider. And that's the Johnny
I remember that argument about what is street level.
But the point is that when I looked at this list, I'm like, and they announced that Heroes for Hire was coming, and then I know you guys haven't. I'm not going to get into this, and I'm not going to even mention anything about this. At some point we're going to review Iron Fist Season 2, but I'm not going to explain my opinion of it. But what I'm going to say is this: there's a setup so that when Heroes for Hire does eventually happen, and I showed Son this list yesterday from the Marvel Wikipedia about the Heroes for Hire. They had Colleen Wing on there. They had Iron Fist. They had Richard Dragon. They had but they had all these characters. The only characters that were on that list that were not in Netflix were the characters in the Avengers, like Black Widow, and characters like or the Hulk. So I said, Son, is it possible that this is their list that they used for this new show that they announced? Because they did announce that they want to do Moon Knight, they want to do Blade, and they want to do, who was the other one? Whoever I just mentioned, Ghost Rider. The Johnny Blaze version of Ghost Rider, not the one ABC used.
I'll be honest, I'm interested in seeing Nicolas Cage in a Netflix series.
Well, that would be cool, but I'm just saying, it made sense to me that when they do Heroes for Hire, they've already set it up because most of the characters on that list are already owned, or not owned, but they're being used by Marvel, Netflix, and they're already in Iron Man, Daredevil, and all that. So I was like, I mean, damn, I'm like thinking about that. So I don't know.
Well, I think it's pretty clear that Marvel has drawn a very distinct line between its cinematic characters and its television characters, and they obviously coexist in the same universe, but you don't really see them cross over to an extent.
They did mention Sokovia, though.
I'm
sorry. Oh, never mind.
Well, they mention stuff. They mention stuff all the time.
No, I mean, I didn't mean to spoil. I'm sorry.
My point is that the characters pretty much are separate. You see that in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. The cinematic characters stay in movies, and the TV characters, stay on TV, and that's smart. They reference each other, which is great because that's just strong branding, but it also makes it affordable because one guest shot by Chris Hemsworth as Thor would use up your whole season budget. So
right.
So
and then you have to pull time
smart
travel
about it. Well, yeah, I mean that's a whole other issue.
Yeah,
flashback show.
And again, back to what I said of that, each medium it affords an entirely different storytelling method. Whether we're talking about the films, whether we're talking about the over the air shows, or whether we're talking about Netflix, and we're talking about three entirely different mediums that afford entirely different line of story. I mean, look, if you're watching Jessica Jones, season 1 or season 2, doesn't matter. You're watching that, and you didn't know that was part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe without them having mentioned it. If you just dropped in and started watching it and didn't see the Marvel logo at the beginning, you would never know that was a Marvel show. You would just think it's a show about this broad that kicks ass. That's a superhero. You wouldn't really have any clue.
I had
it's interesting. It's like Carlos says. They've drawn a very clear line as to how they want each of these characters, represented in those particular mediums.
And Shawn, it's funny. I'm only going to mention this before we move on because you hit a sort of a memory. I want to say for me. I had a friend of mine, and she told me, she was like, "George, help me out." And I'm like, "What's going on?" And she says, "A friend of mine she's over here right now. We're watching Jessica Jones season 2, and she's never even seen season 1. She has she doesn't read comic books. She has no clue. All she's seeing is a chick who has been raped, is an alcoholic, drinking whiskey all the time while she does the job, and she's just going, what is this show? She was going nuts. She was like going crazy. And I'm like, does she understand the character? And she's like, no, I don't think so. And she's like, but she doesn't, even if it wasn't even a Marvel superhero show, context, that's the thing. Jessica Jones, I just want to take a second to just shout out that if you've never understood who this character is, and you're at a friend's house and the friend has that show on, or even if you just walk into it, be careful because there's more to a show like this than just jumping in and saying, this character has this history and she's done these things, and
right. And I think here's the thing about it. I'm a huge fan of the Punisher. The Punisher is by far.
That's another good example. Yep.
Right, it's always been my favorite character in the Marvel universe. And to be quite honest, he's the Punisher as a character within the Marvel universe is it's always been a very a difficult relationship.
Controversial, yeah.
And it's because
it's difficult.
I think
he's a difficult character to
get right,
portray.
Well, and that's it. And the other thing about this too is you can't. I think the biggest failure of the years of the portrayal of the Punisher, Frank Castle, has been attempting to do it in a 2-hour film. And mind you, actually, I think. People think I'm nuts when I say this, but I think Punisher Warzone was the closest they ever got. But I've said for years that the only way you're really going to be able to get into the deep psychosis, which is Frank Castle, is to do this over with a television series, and they finally did it. And with the strike, what struck me about the Punisher series is like you go into it, you expecting him to just be blowing people apart left and right, and that's not what that series is.
Well, they established that in Daredevil season 2.
Right, episode 10 is my favorite episode of all time. The prison scene, but I like when you go into the Punisher, you do expect that level of just violence porn. I grant you that, but that's not what the character is about. That's not what's appealed to people who've enjoyed the character since his first appearance in Spider-Man in I think 75.
And they used rubber bullets back then or something like that. It was like they're trying to make him, he's a bad guy, but he used rubber bullets, so that's okay.
Well, yeah, there's so much more going on with that character, and they really just in Daredevil season 2 they dug into it. They did a very nice start digging into it, and in the Punisher season 1 they did a great job. It's like
Yeah, they did.
Marvel seems to recognize what characters of theirs within their universe
Well,
work for which medium. And
let's be honest. That what they've wanted to do with the Punisher, they were only able to successfully do with Deadpool. Because Deadpool as a concept is easy to grasp. What if the Joker, but a quote-unquote good guy?
Well, yeah, but the thing about Deadpool with Deadpool is, again, Deadpool is an absurd character, and there's and I not look. I love Deadpool. Don't get me wrong on that. I mean,
And number 2 was one of my favorite movies of the year. So I'm just saying.
I thought Deadpool was fantastic. Deadpool 2 was fantastic, but again, that is just straight up violence porn, and mixed in with just very dark humor, and that's so that really works. But with with the Punisher, you're talking about a character who was
who's dealing with psychosis.
He's dealing with psychosis and a tremendous loss that none of us could ever possibly imagine. And the comics really did they took kind of the Batman approach to this, really dug into that psychosis, and that's what made the character so compelling. Where the films basically are, okay, bad shit happened, this guy goes and kills everybody. That's basically what those films are about. Whereas, like I said,
revenge porn. That's another trope.
It's exactly. And there's the I'm like 4 episodes through. When I first started watching The Punisher on Netflix last year, I was 4 episodes into it going, you know what? I am so glad they're not going that route of just killing everybody, because obviously you're gonna get some of that, like I said, but that's not what they wanted to do with it. They wanted to dig into the character the same way they've done with Luke Cage and Jessica Jones, and I think it's great. And wouldn't it be fucking swell if some knuckles at WB say, you know what, maybe we should start getting some of these series on streaming. Maybe we should start getting some of our characters on streaming. Can you imagine a freaking Batman series on probably not Netflix? It's kind of
you're going to get that with Teen Titans, trust me.
Well, that's what we need more. I want to see more.
Well,
and
they promised that the Titan series was going to be violent. It was going to be like Game of. I heard one person quoted this, and this is what bothers some people. The Titans thing is coming up in this new DC All Access. It's going to be so violent that they're like, oh, you might want to make sure you watch it before your kids, because Starfire, Robin, they're all gonna they're gonna beat some shit out of people.
Wow.
Yeah, but that's not really what I'm getting at, because again, we're right back to the problem of because that's a team, okay, and that's kind of like why I think Defenders doesn't work. Okay, you
might have a good point.
As opposed to taking like one character and just focusing on that one character. I mean, look, Jessica Jones is a fucking mess, and I love her for it. To be honest, I mean, it gives me so much insight into the character. And this season, one of the great things about season 2 was that the amount of flashbacks they did to her growing up and what happened and how she got to this point, which I appreciate it. I think it seems kind of a dud other than that, but I mean, still, I mean, it's nice to see that. So,
Carlos, what were you? No, that's fine. Carlos, what were you about to say?
Well, I just think that format-wise, I think it's, you may be painting with too broad a brush by saying that a team-based show is not going to be able to be successful from a character standpoint. I think that the Teen Titans under George Perez back in the 80s
was the best. Yeah,
it was great, and that was because it was the use of the ensemble to go more in depth with these individuals. It was just within the context of colleagues. So it can be done. I feel like Defenders' problem was that they didn't do that enough. It was still too much of here's these individuals who happen to have to come together, unite to battle a common enemy, but it really was less about them sort of posturing against each other rather than living and discovering things about themselves because of the teamwork.
And I agree with Carlos because I'm a huge George Perez fan. Between his Wonder Woman and although I'm happy with what Patty Jenkins did, but as far as the interpretation of the Teen Titans, that was for me the bar, and the way you just described it was perfect. It was like these guys all came together, and once they did, they decided, hey, we can do more good than bad as a team. Whereas the Defenders was like, how long can we keep arguing about how much we don't need each other before?
Yeah, it gets tiresome after a while.
It does. It's like how about we start saying, hey, we work pretty well together, instead of saying how much they are fighting each other by the end of the episode. Hey, maybe we do have some redeeming qualities together as a team, but they're all a bunch of loners, and they're like, the way they wrote them is like, but I can do this and I can do that, and I don't need you. But I hang out in a Chinese parlor. Hey, we can fight together. That's cool. But we can't get along together. So we can never be like a company or a superhero team. So what my hope is, and this is the whole point of why this was brought up, I'm hoping that Heroes for Hire, if it happens, is going to make up for that, because there's sort of a sub-Defenders thing in Marvel. Same idea. The same group of people, they just kind of took it to a lower level, and I'm hoping that they go, okay, everybody in this Netflix universe, they work together, they say, hey, listen, we're Heroes for Hire, and I'm hoping that, it all works out. I think it will if the Defenders didn't work because of the way it was written and the way they did it, but I have this weird...
It was 6 episodes, and it took them forever to actually finally join up.
Get to the point. Yeah, I mean,
exactly.
Get to the point.
Yeah.
Already.
Well, that's
speaking of things that are tiring to talk about over and over and over again, like what we're discussing. Can we move on to the Sabrina trailer?
We can. Yeah, thank you, son, for that honest feedback. Anyways, and actually, I'm glad for that. But anyways, the next subject is. And we'll do this one and then, see how we feel about ending the show. I'm not worried about it anymore. The next one is, I know I want to talk about this, and so did Carlos. I don't know about the rest of you. But we got a trailer for the Riverdale spinoff based on a popular comic book series that became a CW 90210, as Carlos would put it, and I agree with that. That would be Sabrina. And Riverdale is Archie. And I love Archie as a comic book. I've only started to watch the first couple of episodes of Riverdale as a show. I was a little bit put off, but anyways, the point is that they revealed this trailer for how they're going to handle Sabrina. And Carlos, what do you think?
Well, I saw the trailer, and it was a decent trailer. It definitely has a very strong horror pitch to it. I'm not really that big of a horror fan, but because it is around a well-known, beloved character, I like the idea of how they're going to kind of subvert that and spin it into something interesting. It's one of the things I liked about and still like about Riverdale. With Riverdale, I feel like
invert your expectations.
Well, sure, but the problem with their most recent season is that, like, I watched Riverdale because I like these characters. I want to see how they grow and change and interact and all of that. And this last season was so much about setting up mysteries and betrayals, and it was just so soap opera-esque from a story perspective that. It kind of lost its
CW is what it comes down to.
Yeah, but the thing is, again, I think CW, when it comes to the 100, proves that you can take a CW typical premise and turn it into something that's on a different level. And Riverview has that potential. It still has the potential. I'm hoping that it does grow in that way. I find the most compelling character in Riverdale is not Archie. It's not Veronica. It is
Cherry?
Jughead. No, it's Jughead.
Okay.
It's Jughead and Betty. I think are the real stars of that show, because they're the ones who, even though they do some ridiculous stuff with Betty's backstory, well, I don't want to do spoilers, but some of which is just not believable.
By now, at least okay, listen, Riverdale by now, if people haven't watched it, I think it's pretty safe to say they have. I'm only in the middle of the first season, but you know what? I'm not worried about it. I am going by the fact that I was a huge Archie Comics fan, so I don't mind if you guys spoil it. for episodes I haven't seen. But by now, Riverdale, it's been out for a while. So yeah, go ahead.
Well, I mean,
Spoiler alerts.
my point is that they're doing some things with Betty that just aren't believable. Like they actually have her commit murder, and it's like it just feels like a plot device rather than some like an earned eventuality on her part. But still, overall, I find her character and how she's dealing with the changes in her life, and and being romantically involved with Jughead, which I don't think ever happened in the comics.
No,
I
it
think
didn't.
that was brilliant, and I find I like the chemistry between them. I like the sense of tragedy, that they exhibit, and I feel like they've become at the center kind of the most compelling characters in that whole show, and everyone else is pretty much window dressing around them by comparison.
Now, is Sabrina? I know that it's on Netflix, but from my understanding, and I could be wrong, it is meant to be in the same shared universe. It's just a crossover network thing, like the way that Supergirl was on the CBS and then Arrow and everything was on the CW until they changed that. But it's meant to be in the same shared universe. Am I wrong? You know what I mean?
Well, I'm not sure they've actually
Confirmed.
explicitly said that one way or the other. My guess is probably it will be, but you're not going to see much in the way of crossover, at least.
I'll be entirely honest. The watching the trailer, the only thing running through my mind is it going to have the talk? Is the cat going to talk?
I hope so.
It's just like, because I'm sorry, I grew up in the '90s when there was Sabrina the Teenage Witch.
Melissa played, yeah.
Melissa Joan Hart, yeah.
Okay, I wanted to just verify that we are talking about Sabrina the Teenage Witch here.
Yes,
yeah,
yes,
because
Sabrina. Yeah.
Okay, I
didn't
want to dip my toe into this water and not
because you had the two ants that were standing behind her at the birthday party in that little trailer. Yes.
According to the producers, it is a spin-off of Riverdale, which implies that they're in the same shared universe, according to the way they're wording it. But they haven't said. But see, this is the thing. I don't think they have to go out of their way to say, if it's a spin-off of Riverdale, my thing is, that means it's Riverdale. It's in the same universe.
See, here's the thing, George. You said that Riverdale works so hard to subvert expectations.
No, I didn't say that.
I thought you did.
Ryan Johnson said that about The Last Jedi. Are we talking about the same thing? What's going
on?
No.
Carlos said that earlier. I think.
Well, okay. So Riverdale works so hard to subvert expectations, and then here comes Sabrina, this new Sabrina, the Teenage Witch-ish thing, and it's pervert the unexpected.
Okay, you can run with that. But in the Archie universe itself, Sabrina was the sort of wild card of the Archie universe. The Archie universe comics, when Sabrina came in, even in fun, she introduced magic. Even in the comics of the 50s,
and it was 60s, it was gaggy magic. It wasn't really anything nasty or horrible.
But that's where they changed it up, which is I have no problem with that. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to ask you, back to the last subject. Have you ever seen the Archie Punisher crossover comic?
Oh my God!
It's a thing. I have it. It's a thing, and I have it. Look it up. It's as absurd as you could possibly imagine. So yes, but
so it's Bruce Valanche absurd. Okay.
Yeah, kind of. I mean,
probably worse.
Yeah, Imagine the Punisher being shackled with the weight of Archie hanging around him all the time. That's basically what it is. It's in fact, I think if I recall correctly, I have it in my stack of comics. It says the crossover you've always dreaded, something like that. But look, my thing on this is I'm actually, I remember I'm like son. I of course remember Sabrina Teenage Witch, and the first thing I said, "Are we gonna get that damn talking cat?" But I like this notion of making a dark series about Sabrina, because it's kind of like one of those weird things where it's like, how do you not make a dark series about a teenage witch? How do you turn that into a comedy? It's like I never really
Especially
understood.
when you have the success of something like American Horror Story.
But
Well,
you know what? They're actually
I
turning her
never
into
understood. I never
Wednesday
understood
Addams.
Bewitched. I never really understood Bewitched, to be honest. I always thought that was fucking weird as hell. That whole show. So I mean, so I'm digging this idea. I like the actress that they've cast for this. It's the young lady who played Don Draper's daughter on Mad Men, and she was outstanding on that show. And I think she started on that show when she's about 8 years old, and
Yeah, yeah.
she is an outstanding actor. And so I'm kind of looking forward to this a lot more than I really expected I would be.
I think the brilliance of the CW shows, and I realize this is on Netflix, but it's still sort of coming out of that universe, is always comes down to the casting. They
Yes.
cast
Yep,
really
right back to that.
compelling
Yep.
actors that really embody these characters very well. They get you emotionally invested in them, and then they just
Yeah.
pick up and run with it. And I think that's one of the, and it's not stunt casting. It's really, they really are going for an authentic look and feel in how these actors embody these very iconic roles and still turn them into very human roles, which is, I think, the opposite of what you see in the DC universe, is that Henry Cavill as Superman and Ben Affleck as Batman stay iconic, and you just don't really get into them as people. I think you do with Wonder Woman. She is the exception that proves the rule. But I think the TV versions of these shows really go for casting literally the right people to embody these characters.
Yeah, I think they have to by default. Again, we're back to a network with limited budget compared to $9 million an episode for Star Trek Discovery. Where they're in a position where they have to get the best production people out there to cast the best people for these roles.
It isn't just that. Actually, I have a theory about it. As you guys were talking, I started to think about it. If you're going to have a shared universe, why not just make another CW show and call it Sabrina? So I started thinking about it, and it's kind of weird. It happened in the middle of this conversation, but I thought about it. What would be the reason to put on Netflix besides like some kind of a business deal? Well, exactly. You can only go so far on network TV. So you need
of course.
But you can still. Torchwood and Doctor Who is my comparison. Okay, so you had Torchwood, and they wanted to go dark, and they called it post Watershed over in England, and so the Doctor could the way the rules were is the Doctor could never visit Torchwood, but Jack and them could visit Doctor Who, and the reason why it worked that way was one show was meant to be lighter, like a PG, and the other one was the R-rated thing. So you could still have it be part of the same shared universe, but there was a way you had to handle it so that you could go, oh, this one's dark and has sex and evil stuff going on, and this one has the lighthearted family thing. But in order to keep the brands kind of separated, we have to put them on different networks. I'm starting to think that's why they did this.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. The streaming services have opened up a world of creativity for these franchises, without question. I mean, there's just so many different outlets where you can get your Marvel fix, your DC fix, hell, your Star Trek fix now. I mean, I think this is great. I think people, the amount that people complain about having to pick up the new services to pay to see this new content. Look, we're living in a golden age right now, as far as I'm concerned. I think this is absolutely.
I do agree with you, but you know as well as I do that the majority of people you're going to see in your feed are going to go, I got to pay for a paywall. I'm not going to. I have to pay for Disney. I have to pay for the new Star Wars show.
Buddy, I don't think that's the case. I think there's a loud vocal minority, and
they're a bunch of old fogies, basically.
I know.
Yeah, it's basically it. I mean,
I agree, but I'm just saying, like, that's all I ever see on my wall.
George, I don't think you do. I think what happens is that's what ticks us off the most. I find far more people on our side of this than those that, but it's just like the people that come up with all these ridiculous arguments against it. It's just like it just torques you so much. That's what you remember. You know what I mean? I think, you know, our generation here. So I'm 43 years old. Okay,
And I'm about to turn 48 in a couple of weeks.
all right. So you and I we're late X Geners here. Okay.
Yeah.
So and basically we're kind of like in a borderline demographic here where we could have gone either way, either the old fogey route or recognizing this is great shit we got going on here. And
It's a golden age almost.
it is, and I think I think that most of folks like us in this generation are really recognize that this is really a great opportunity, a great time to get contact we never had before. I mean, can you honestly imagine? I mean, think about the 80s. 80s and 90s? Can you imagine having all of these types of just genre shows that we loved from the comic books, the science fiction that we never saw, that we're seeing today, that's available and possible?
I'm still remembering my Michael Jackson jacket that my mom bought me after I bugged her, and it ripped on the first day I wore it, and she was pissed.
Which one?
The red one.
The
one
red
from
leather
Thriller.
one.
The Thriller one? Yeah, because there's two. There's the Thriller and there's the Beat It.
She
right.
bought it for me, and it ripped. I put it on, like, I tried to do the moonwalk, and I did it ripped. We hear it.
No, the Beat It one is the one he watches porn in.
I don't even want to speculate.
Outstanding.
I'd like to add a couple of things to what
Sure.
Shawn said, because I think you're entirely correct that there is a creative freedom available on a streaming service that simply doesn't exist in a mainstream broadcast network. But there's a few other considerations, and they're important ones because I think they are they're preeminent, and that's essentially the economic considerations.
Mm-hmm.
We know that genre shows generally just don't do well on mainstream broadcast networks.
Right.
They just don't. You have to appeal to too wide an audience, and they're just not going to show up. It's in niche networks that are created like the CW, like Netflix, where shows like this can thrive because they don't have to make big mainstream numbers. They have to demonstrate a value to a valuable niche, and that's what they do successfully. I mean, there's reasons why Supergirl started on CBS and then moved to CW.
Yep. Production costs.
And
you know what?
Yeah, I mean,
go ahead, Carlos.
It's not just production costs; it's also audiences.
Mm-hmm.
CBS, its audience, the people who tune into it, are not of the same sort of age and demographic. It did well enough on CBS, but it was better suited to the niche that you find on the CW. Hence, they moved over there. So it was less about economics. About production costs, although those played an important role, but more about what audience you're appealing to. And it was easier for them to make that appeal on a network that already has captured that audience by and large, rather than having to glom them onto an existing and much older audience, as you saw on the middle CBS network.
And Netflix already has some pretty dark crap.
Yeah, Netflix by definition is a niche. It's a lot of niches all put together, and because it doesn't, and this is the other important thing, is it doesn't have to compete for a time slot
like you do on quill.
Yeah, it's just once you take out the having to compete for a time slot issue, you gain all kinds of economic flexibility that just doesn't exist on a broadcast network.
And this is the thing, is that Carlos pointed that the time slot thing it was very important, because here's what it comes down to. There's a misconception about network television that I always thought was true too, and I did a ton of research on this, and it come to find out that it's not about who you're competing with on other networks. Basically, it's who you're competing with within your own network. That's what it comes down to. And he's absolutely correct. when you're competing with a time slot for another show on your network, whether you're on CBS or anything else. And with CBS, that audience skews older. They like the NCISs. They like they like
They like anything that already has a
boring,
brand that they don't have to work for.
The boring comedies, the NCISs, your Hawaii Five-O's, your blue, this basic cookie cutter stuff. And look, I'm not going to criticize that. It's just not my thing. You know what I mean? Is what it comes down to. But
and that's why you're seeing CBS All Access going for a different audience, having its own character. Just like CW is distinct from CBS, All Access is going to be distinct from CBS too. So,
and that's what people don't understand.
Guys, before I forget,
they think they're paying for CBS. They don't understand that it's they can't wrap their heads around this concept that it's a completely different service that CBS All Access is providing.
I agree, but let me just, before I forget, sorry, I got distracted. What I was going to jump off of, something that Carlos said earlier, okay, don't quote me on this, but it just made me think about this. So CW, like, they're doing their thing, but the thing is, they're based out of Canada. Now, we have never talked
they're
about
shot in Canada. They're not based out of Canada.
You're right.
They're
You're
based
right.
out of Hollywood and New York, just like the rest of the.
Correct. Yeah. They chose Canada. You're right. I'm sorry. Good clarification. So the CW is based out of there, and then they shoot and produce in Canada for almost everything. And the thing is that. The thing is, I want to bring up iZombie. It's almost over with, and the only reason I'm going to bring this up is that we're talking about this is where they produce, so it becomes their sort of, I don't want to say headquarters. It's where they shoot their stuff. But often on all of these CW shows, which includes Riverdale, the majority of all the actors are Canadians because they hire locally because it's convenient.
It's not just convenient. There's the tax issues associated.
Oh
with
yeah,
that.
in
order to get the tax breaks, they have to have a certain percentage of cast and crew who are Canadian.
By the way, minor trivia. I don't remember her name, Madeline something. I linked it to Carlos one time. The girl who plays Sherry Blossom on Riverdale is actually a professional chef, and she competed against Gordon Ramsay in a vegan cook-off on MasterChef recently. It was pretty funny, but that's just a little trivia. But the point is that they do Kevin Smith, for example, when they do anything with the CW, it's like Canada-based. That's the whole reason why when CBS switched over to the CW for Supergirl, Calissa
Flockhart.
Yes, Flockhart. Had to bow out as the character because she lives in LA with Harrison Ford, and she wasn't willing to move to Canada to continue. And
she has kids too, so
yeah,
family.
Well, it wasn't. Yeah, I'm sure that was part of it too, of course. But not everybody was ready to just go, "Hey, I'm going to move over to Canada because they're doing that's because we switched over networks." But what I'm trying to say is that the whole thing about Riverdale and all these other shows is, and we got Charmed coming up. That's going to be something we're going to talk about in the future because I'm a huge old school Charmed fan, and I'm going to be very critical of the new. I'm open to the diversity of the new Charmed.
Before we go too far down that road,
okay, go ahead.
Can you tell me what it is your point about Canada is, though? What's the
point
you're trying to make?
I'm just trying to say that some of the things we're saying about the shows that you guys are talking about and all the things is that I just thought I wondered, I didn't know for sure. I wondered if there's a factor in whether they're locally hiring from Canada as far as the actors. You know what I'm saying? I'm not judging them.
They're very much they're very much is. They've got the point of all these shows, and there's so many. It's like there's actually, if you do a Wikipedia search, there's actually a list. Just do list of science fiction shows filmed in Canada, and it is miles long, going back 30 years. Okay, so you've got the production costs in general they're much less in Canada, which is why you see so many productions done in Vancouver, because Vancouver's their geographic diversity there, from looking like everything from New York City to whatever the hell that island is
Yeah, I don't. Isle Shoals,
air,
like I don't know.
well, remember the
No,
remember
that's no. I'm sorry.
remember what's that Chinese island that what's his name the Arrow is on? That's not really done on a Chinese island. That's a park in outside of Vancouver that they film at it. I mean, there's so much diversity in their geography that they're able to. It's the same way for Southern California that they're able to fake locations, and that's why you've got that going on there. But it's so much cheaper for them to produce there. But then, as far as casting is concerned, that's exactly what Carlos alluded to, was that they're required for those tax benefits to cast locally.
But that's what I like. I think in some ways that's
plenty of Canadian. There's plenty of Canadian talent out there. There's no question about that.
Yeah, and I just the only reason I even brought that up is like I thought about it. I'm like, most of the whole reason why the CW is on our radar is, and the reason why they don't mind doing it I'm going by what they said in interviews, is a lot of times there are actors who go over to Canada, such as Grant Gustin. He's not from. I don't think he's from there.
He's not.
Neither is the girl who plays Supergirl, Melissa
Benoist.
Benoist. Thank you. I suppose the last name's scary, but they went over there because they did the whole transition. But the point is that a lot of original Canadian actors have benefited from any of these production site castings, and I think it's. I just wonder, like.
Well, that's the whole point of the tax incentives. It's to grow an infrastructure, both technical and artistic, in terms of actors, that makes a compelling case for shows to be shot there. So, typically what happens is that the leads are cast. It doesn't matter where they're from. They cast whoever they think is going to be the most bankable leads, and everyone else is usually cast locally.
Right. Look at BSG. I mean, prime example.
Yeah, and if you start cross-referencing casts between all of these different shows, you'll see that there's a huge overlap. These people get work over and over and over and over again, and it's because they're cheaper, they're available. It just makes sense.
How they get known. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, totally.
All right.
So yeah, I mean, so we've gone. So basically, what it comes down to is that again, back to what these streaming services have opened up to, what these new mediums have opened up to. It's global diversity across, or whether it be whether we're talking about content or talent. I mean, that's what it's giving us across the board. So, hey,
it all comes down. It all comes down to economics, because the problem you're running into is that as a huge part of California's economy, it just became that was very successful and very lucrative. The natural sort of inflation of costs started to go up.
Right.
Everything cost more in California, and trying to produce new shows, you needed to hold down costs, and so you saw this outflow of production to other places, and you see it domestically as well. It's not just in Canada. You see it in Georgia, you see it in Louisiana, you see it in New Mexico, all these places that have been able to successfully and consistently lure productions away from Hollywood because it's cheaper, and because people don't charge as much for things. When you know that millions and millions of dollars are in these budgets, people in those it's why I've never made a film in California. It's because everything is more expensive. If I want to rent a person's house, people are renting houses for locations in California all the time, and they charge you commensurately for that. Whereas when I go to a neighborhood in Portland, Oregon, and say I'd like to rent your house, I can do it for a price I can afford. And so I get a lot more bang for my buck from those kinds of locations.
And the Canadian... They just from what I've seen. I mean, I'm not in the industry, but I've seen enough, I've seen enough things to say they enjoy the opportunities that we bring over there when we do those things. To say, they'll give the most awesome price, And the CW's entire history has been out of, I guess, Vancouver, and there's a reason why. And you look at the quality they put out. You're not only just producing the actors, these rising stars that come from Canada. I remember when I was raising my daughter as a single dad, or I should say, putting her through high school, not raising her completely, but there was a show she watched. I can't remember what I said. It was the girl who, Carlos, you might remember her. She plays Saturn Girl in Smallville. She was a Canadian, and they did Smallville in Canada too, ironically.
Yeah.
And this girl, she played the main character on this show. She was a singer, and she ended up being cast as Saturn Girl in the Smallville Legion episode. Well, I remember back when, way before the Smallville episode came out, my daughter was a huge, she was watching her on Nickelodeon or whatever channel it was, and I was like, and I remembered her as soon as they cast her on Smallville. But I didn't know it at the time that Smallville was based in, that they were sort of the seed precursor for what became the CW, but that they were in Canada. I didn't know they were out there. And this, it was the same girl, and I'm like, that's kind of weird because she's a Canadian actor.
It's not that weird. You see a lot of actors and actresses who just they're in show after show after show after show.
For me, it's
right.
I'm just saying.
This has been something that really has been quietly done for not quietly, but really just not a lot of attention.
Instant Star, I think that's what it's called.
For what's it called?
I think the show is called Instant Star. The girl who plays Saturn Girl. Sorry, I'm just having a memory.
I vaguely know what you're talking about, but yeah.
This has been going on quietly for 30 years, but it's been really in the past. Since the aughts, we're really seeing a whole lot of it done. And Carlos is right. It's the economic. Look, at the end of the day, Hollywood's a business. This is bottom line stuff. I'll give you a baseball reference. Look, not for nothing. In 1947, Branch Rickey didn't bring up Jackie Robinson simply because it was a great thing to do to integrate baseball. It was the fact of the matter was the talent was there among athletes of color, and it wasn't being utilized. And it was primarily to improve the economics of the game. It's the economics here, diversity. At the end of the day, they result in this diversity, and I think again it's a positive.
All right. Well,
yeah, I totally agree. I would add just one other thing to that, and that's that it comes down to the work ethic of these creative people. And Jackie Robinson, like a lot of African American athletes, had an amazing work ethic because they had to prove themselves. And I think you see the same thing between actors from Canada and actors in LA. And I've noticed this in my own casting is that actors from anywhere but LA generally have better work ethics because they're hungrier. People in LA get used to a certain way of doing things, and it shows up in the way they work or don't work, as the case may be. Whereas, any Canadian actor that I've encountered, and I'm not the only one who's made this observation. I mean, there've been plenty of people in the. I think the Atlantic had an article about how why are all these American roles going to people who are not American? They're going to people from England and Australia and Canada, and it's because they're actors who are trained. They're actually spend the time and the money and the effort to get formal training to become very good at it. Whereas the classical thing in Hollywood is, you've got a fresh-faced actor who comes from, wherever, Arkansas or whatever, and which is great, but they aren't trained, and
hey, I resemble that remark.
They're no Patrick Stewart.
Exactly.
They're not Shakespearean.
They're no William Shatner, Canadian. Jason Priestley, Canadian. I mean, I could go on and on.
He was Canadian, wasn't he?
Yes, he was.
And then that circles back to the whole 90210 equals Riverdale, as Carlos tried to sell me on Riverdale.
It's my unified theory of television.
All right,
that's terrifying and fascinating at the same time.
It is. There's so many parallels to the universe that we could all get creeped out about in
Unfortunately, I think we're going to have to call the show here, guys.
I think so. Thanks, son.
Wait, what?
We're running out of time.
Are we out of time?
No, well, it's not that much out of our time. The longer we go, the tape gets longer as far as the size of the...
The longer we go, the more boring the conversation gets.
Indeed.
If you have nothing to say.
See, this
Diminishing returns.
This is why I pay, son. Oh wait, no, I don't.
This is why I have the leash, George. And you have the collar.
Well,
whoa!
I think
I'm Batman. I'm Batman.
And I'm Catwoman.
We start talking about collars and leashes. That's when I start worried we're going to start going into the accident.
It's a private joke. Son and I did an episode of Bat Radio where Batman came. Anyways, it's a long story.
We've explained this before, yes.
Oh, yeah, but Shawn wasn't there for that.
Well,
wait, he might have been.
Well, this is kind of fortuitous, I think, that it's working out. We got to end here because I think we wanted to get Shell in on this discussion of Jack Ryan anyway. And so that's actually a good point because she tried, but she couldn't make it. But that's all right because I'm saving it because I'm trying to finish. I won't spoil what I'm going to say about Jack Ryan, but I haven't finished the entire season, so maybe it is for the best. So, anyways. Yeah. And I got to install.
We'll get to Jack Ryan eventually.
We will. All right. So I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight for this episode, episode 7, I believe it was, of Super Geeks, and we talked about some interesting stuff tonight, mostly about Canada. And I'm sorry, it's South Park, but we're not going to bomb Canada, no matter what you think. My apologies. Because I really because we can't get the next CW crossover if they do that. So Celine Dion, lead the charge. No, I'm just kidding. Anyways, I want to thank you guys for joining us tonight. And Carlos, where can people basically find you if they are looking for you without trying to get creepy?
I'm regularly on the Axe Monitor Facebook group, and my writing appears on the axemonitor.com website and on Twitter at axemonitor and at cpedraza.
I'll make sure to link that. And Shawn, to be creepy, where can people find you?
Rooting around through Carlos's garbage, kind of like you with James Colley.
Or at your local Lowe's, right?
Yeah, at my local Lowe's. That's usually, yeah.
If you need a dishwasher, talk to Shawn. You'll give us a review of your dishwasher. I want a review of your... Right. You just bought it tonight. I want a review next time of your dishwasher.
Oh, boy.
Put it on Yelp. Put it on Yelp.
I'll see what I can... Yeah, put it on Yelp. I'll put it on Yelp. That's pretty
because Shawn, for people that don't know, before the show started, he was worried about being here on time because he's talking to us from his iPhone, and he's in the middle of Lowe's getting a new dishwasher. And in the middle of this very episode, he's in the middle of arranging to go here, there, and everywhere and drop off his dishwasher. So you know what? I want to know all about this goddamn dishwasher next time because this dishwasher.
Yeah, I'll give you a play-by-play of the installation, which I'm going to go do right now. So
I just want a review. That's all I want to know.
Okay.
All right. And son,
right, guys.
Where can people find you?
You can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/SunsealFan. And this makes me want to bring up something that's very important. I know a lot of people have been talking about the Alex Jones thing, for the past month and better. But when your only social media and the only social media that you want to have is Facebook, and you get banned from Facebook like I was, you kind of lean towards the people shouldn't be just outright banned from social media platforms, no matter what.
Like a venereal disease, you need to learn to spread yourself out. Now, that's a bad example. I'm sorry.
Oh.
Actually, that was
that even for me, that's a little too far.
Yeah. I'm sorry. As soon as I said it, I regretted it.
We regretted it for you. So
I know. I was trying to be funny, but sometimes you gotta take a risk.
Your grandkids crossed their legs for that one.
Well, when comedy's all about taking risks.
Yeah, it's all about taking risks, exactly. And thank you. Phew. That was what I was trying to do, but I'm not always going to hit that, even though I haven't in general.
You haven't hit that in the first place.
That's what I was saying.
Oh!
Fuzzy bear, haha. Anyways,
Waka,
there you go. So,
all right, guys, I'm busting out right now.
I was going to edit that out, but maybe I'll leave it in. You guys let me know what you want. But anyways, thank you for joining us, and we will talk about something more interesting. Actually, no, we won't. We'll talk about the same interest level next time, and maybe Shawn will have his dishwasher installed.
Bye,
Stay tuned.
everybody.
Take it easy.
I want to hear it in
Bye-bye.
the background next time.
I
Shawn.
do. I want to hear clean dishes.